Kate Palmer captures some pictures of a hospital across the street from her to truly appreciate the beauty of its architecture. She expresses her sentiments to her sister Jacqueline, who is the architect behind this hospital. Kate feels good about the direction Jacqueline's life is heading in. She just finished this project and is dating a guy named Peter, so her life is coming together. Jacqueline is not so sure about that and changes the subject. She has been missing Kate and wishes they could spend some more time together. Kate offers her some licorice to cheer her up, but Jacqueline has given up sugar now. Kate is concerned to hear that sugar has also entered the list of things Jacqueline can't have, along with caffeine and gluten. This has a lot to do with Peter's ideologies to go around in life, which Kate also knows about from his famous book. They both smile at how wonderful it would be if one day they just threw caution to the wind and lived carelessly like when they were kids. An ambulance pulls up in front of them and the EMTs pull out a man lying on a stretcher. They lift it and the man springs out of the stretcher wearing a tuxedo with roses in his hands. It takes the girls a while to realize that it's Peter. Jacqueline inquires if he's okay while he begins his monologue about how his book got famous 5 months ago, which was a special occasion for him. They're on camera and he goes on about how at that time, Jacqueline was brought in to design the new addition to the children's wing outside, where they're standing right now. He met her, and it was practically love at first sight. He believes she is the sweetest, smartest, and prettiest woman to him, and this expression of love makes Jacqueline blush, among all the people watching them. He hands her the flowers, gets down on one knee, and proposes to her. Jacqueline gasps as he shows her the ring and asks her to marry him on Valentine's Day, which is fast approaching. Jacqueline pauses this romantic gesture to confirm if he is talking about marrying her this Valentine's Day, which is a week later. He delivers one more romantic dialogue, looking into the camera to convince her, and she reluctantly utters a yes as he slips the ring onto her finger. Their proposal video has thousands of views on the internet, and Kate shares her thoughts on it, not holding back. She knows that Jacqueline wasn't sure when she said yes and felt obliged to say it, because she was sort of ambushed. It can be seen in the upwards intonation of her yes, and it seemed as if she was questioning herself at that moment. Jacqueline points out that Peter is a great guy and that any woman would be lucky to marry him. Kate agrees that the handsome cardiologist with a best-selling book sounds amazing on paper, but she's only known him for 5 months. Jacqueline still seems a bit brainwashed by him as she quotes his book in his defense. Kate explicitly questions whether this has to do anything with Peter wanting to be named the new chief of the hospital. Jacqueline realizes that this marriage would indeed make him more viable for that position, until she gets distracted by the amount of views their proposal video got. Kate slams the laptop shut in annoyance and asks if Jacqueline is actually in love with Peter. She lists all the physical signs one can feel when they're in love and wonders if Jacqueline gets them when she's around Peter. But Jacqueline is so influenced by Peter that she views them as symptoms of cardiac arrest. Jacqueline gets more serious as she explains to Kate that she's dated some real losers and isn't getting any younger. She's making the safe choice and doesn't mind that she doesn't get to plan her wedding. Peter's mother has arranged for a small family dinner at the hotel where his family always vacations. They pull up outside what's supposed to be a small, tasteful affair, but in reality, is a hotel drowned in tacky wedding decor. Peter's parents welcome and greet Jacqueline, and they seem delighted about the fact that their son found a woman lucky enough to marry him. Peter's father, Philip, isn't as insufferable as his mother, Margaret, who calls the chief of the hospital and his architect wife a power couple. She recognizes Kate as the maid of honor and Jacqueline's sister but doesn't remember her name. She also knows that Kate is also the photographer for the wedding. Margaret also throws in the suggestion of sneaking these pictures to the LA Times so that they can publish those in their high-profile wedding issue. Jacqueline is overwhelmed by all this and Philip understands, but that doesn't stop Margaret from being her politely controlling self. She takes away Philip and Kate to make her dream wedding come to life for Jacqueline. Peter returns from his run, while Jacqueline is trying to look away from all the loud decorations for her wedding. She questions Peter about all the decorations and he blames his mother who didn't listen to him. Jacqueline reminds him that they decided together that if Jacqueline doesn't have the time to plan her wedding, she wants something simple. There's nothing simple about this setup right now and she's visibly upset. Peter understands and agrees to talk to his mother to get all of this taken down. They kiss and Peter lets her go up to her room and rest, where her favorite sparkling water is waiting for her. He'll run some more, after which, he'll sit down to break his mother's heart by asking her to cancel everything. When he reiterates how devastated Margaret would be, Jacqueline feels bad and decides to let everything be. He appreciates her thoughtfulness, kisses her again to leave some sunblock on her face, and resumes his run. Margaret shows Jacqueline and Kate around the venue, which only adds to their horror. When Margaret brings up the first dance, Kate states that dancing makes Jacqueline uncomfortable. Philip is okay with Jacqueline skipping it, but Margaret shuts him down, because she won't let anything come in the way of fulfilling her vision with this wedding. Then, she escorts Kate and Jacqueline to the obnoxious bridal cabin that she evidently decorated herself. The sisters have barely recovered from the flashy arrangements when she throws in the surprise wedding dress in their faces. Since Jacqueline didn't have time to shop, Margaret got her own wedding dress out of storage and cleaned it for her to wear. Jacqueline mentions that she brought a simple white suit to wear, but this is unacceptable for Margaret. To add insult to injury, the dress also comes paired with an umbrella which is also put into Jacqueline's hands. Kate sympathizes with her sister and takes Margaret away to let Jacqueline digest all this. Once Margaret is gone, Kate instructs Jacqueline to take some time to carefully consider the situation. Jacqueline finally tries on the full wedding outfit after Kate leaves. One look at herself in the mirror is enough for her to dial up the concierge and ask where the bridal store in town is. Jacqueline rents a bicycle from the hotel to ride to town but scratches her leg in the woods. She parks her bicycle on a wood stump and tries to call someone to get her, but gets no cell reception. She is starting to get worried when she stumbles into a handsome stranger. He startles her by saying that she won't get any cell service around here. He is amused when she gets scared by the joke he makes about bears in the woods. She brings up that she wanted to head to town and learns that it's about a mile away. He notices the scratch on her leg and comes closer to have a look. But Jacqueline sprints off to the other side because she obviously doesn't trust or know him. He claims to know first aid because he used to be a Boy Scout. Jacqueline is still flustered, so she proceeds to go to town and he offers to walk her there so that she gets there safely. After some hesitation, Jacqueline leaves her bike in the woods and follows the stranger through the woods. They are near a river when he makes a remark about the weather. Jacqueline starts rambling about how they should be wearing sunscreen to avoid sun damage while he takes off his shirt, throws it to her, and cannonballs into the river. Jacqueline screams and doesn't understand why he'd do such a dangerous and irresponsible thing. As they continue their walk, the drenched stranger now comments on her state. He can sense that she's struggling with a decision and that her mind is preoccupied. He takes this opportunity to quote an old Italian saying, stating you know when a decision is right when it feels like getting into a warm bath. Jacqueline has no intention of discussing her personal life with the stranger. The hot man argues that it's very likely that she'll never see him again and he can offer her the most objective, unbiased advice. All this confrontation is bothering Jacqueline, so she decides to go her way, until he utters the question of whether this decision is based on her heart or head. She stops in her tracks and turns around to snap at him. He acts as if he knows her when he met her an hour ago. She stands in his face and tells him how arrogant it is of him to presume things about her or her life, but then he kisses her out of nowhere. As they back from that magical kiss, Jacqueline inquires why he did that. He admits he did it on impulse, to see what would happen. She argues that impulse is the lowest form of human behavior and starts yammering again, while trying to not look at his lips again. She's relieved that she won't see him again because she has practically forced herself to walk away from him right now. She stops again to say one last thing to him, but when she turns around, there's nowhere to be seen. Peter finds her in his golf cart a while later. He and Margaret have been looking all over for her. He also observes the injury on her leg but dismisses it as a surface abrasion, and is glad that she got some exercise in. She admits that she wanted to go to town to look for a wedding dress because Margaret's dress isn't according to her taste. Peter drives her away while insinuating that Margaret's feelings shouldn't be hurt, even though it means dismissing Jacqueline's wants. Jacqueline is still riding with him when she starts to question their decision. There are so many things they haven't talked about yet. This is when they come to an impasse, as it seems that Jacqueline wants kids, but Peter isn't too fond of that idea. However, he promises to work through everything to make her happy. This sugar-coated manipulation coaxes Jacqueline into thinking that marrying Peter is the smartest decision she has ever made. Later, Jacqueline rants about the scruffy mountain man who told her to abandon all her decisions because she's too responsible. She relays this to Kate while taking a warm bath. Kate feels like this adventurous guy really understands her sister but calms her down because she is visibly upset by him. But things change when Kate finds out that he kissed Jacqueline, and surprisingly, she kissed him back. She can see that Jacqueline is blushing red, which might be an indicator of love, but Jacqueline argues that it's because she's outraged and embarrassed. Peter and Jacqueline are at their rehearsal dinner, and Peter gives a speech to the guests. He recalls meeting Jacqueline for the first time and finding her to be the smartest woman he'd ever dated. He mentions how after she started running and eating right, she also became one of the healthiest person he dated, which makes her a perfect demonstration of his teachings. This speech is unsettling to Jacqueline a bit, but she moves past it to recall her first time meeting Peter. He had just returned from Africa where he was doing heart surgeries for children, which made her so impressed. They are kissing when Jacqueline's mountain man walks in the room wearing a suit. He doesn't look so scruffy now and is immediately greeted by Margaret, who calls him Max. Margaret looks thrilled to see that Max will be attending the wedding. Jacqueline almost loses her mind when Peter introduces Max to her as his little brother and best man. Max's expression changes for a while when Peter shows him Jacqueline, his fiancée. They both awkwardly act as if they're meeting for the first time, when Peter throws in Max to hug his future sister-in-law. After a cordial embrace, Peter catches Jacqueline up on the fact that Max is a pediatrician, living and working in Africa. He travels from city to city taking care of sick children. That's why Peter was there too. Margaret loudly praises Max for using his Harvard education to spend his life as a poor humanitarian, while Jacqueline rushes to the bar to catch her breath. Max follows her and they're both mad at each other and themselves for not knowing their identities beforehand. They're arguing in hushed whispers when Peter brings over his grandmother, Nana Rosa, to them. She compliments how beautiful Max and Jacqueline look together, but Peter corrects her. Jacqueline excuses herself and takes her leave to go rest in her bridal cabin to rest for her big day tomorrow. Peter offers to walk her back, but she declines, so Kate follows her back to her room. Max and Peter are left by themselves now, and Max addresses the issue that he wasn't given much notice for this wedding. He wants to know what's really going on, so Peter responds that writing a book is great, but it's having a stable and settled life that'll lead to him being appointed as the chief of the hospital. Max reminds his brother that being chief of the hospital is their mother's wish, not his. Meanwhile, Jacqueline breaks the news to Kate that the scruffy guy cleans up really well, and is none other than Max. They sit down together to decide their next course of action. Jacqueline seems certain to marry Peter now that she's met Max. Peter is predictable, safe, and reliable, which is exactly what she wants in a man. Kate judges her reasoning and guides her to know what's best for her. She advises him to ask herself if this is the happiest day of her life when she wakes up the next morning. Kate is ready to support Jacqueline if that turns out to be true, and if not, she needs to stop this wedding because she can't get a do-over. As she lies in bed to sleep that night, Jacqueline convinces herself that she definitely won't want a do-over. The next morning, Jacqueline is woken by a call from the reception. She stares at the hideous wedding dress hanging in front of her and wonders whether this is really the happiest day of her life. However, she isn't allowed to ponder much as Margaret steps inside her room with Kenneth and Jerry, who will give Jacqueline a wedding makeover. Kate walks in a strange dress and makeup herself, and it's clear that she fell victim to Margaret's tactics as well. Jacqueline reaffirms to both herself and Kate that she's going through with this wedding. Jacqueline is soon transformed into the bride of Margaret's dreams, but there's a sinking feeling in her gut. The wedding ceremony starts as Peter waits for his bride down the altar. Max and Kate also walk down the aisle together as the best man and the maid of honor. The band plays the wedding march as Jacqueline walks down the aisle, and everyone exclaims at how beautiful she looks, despite the horrible dress that she's wearing. She appears nervous and glances at Max, after which, she shifts her gaze to Peter. As the priest narrates how permanent and meaningful the union of marriage is, Peter's face gets just as tense as Jacqueline's. His "I do" sounds just as unsure as Jacqueline's "yes" did a week ago. Jacqueline also says "I do" in the same questionable tone, after which, they're pronounced husband and wife. Peter leans in to kiss her and the audience claps and cheers. Margaret sniffles as the apprehensive couple walks down the aisle together. At the wedding party, Jacqueline trips in her dress and Max saves her. Meanwhile, Peter spills red wine on her dress in an attempt to save her from the fall. Margaret is horrified that her dress is now ruined. Jacqueline is then forced to go to the dance floor with Peter, who tries to help her out. He commands her to follow his lead, revealing how Margaret made him and Max take 6 years of dance lessons. Once the extremely uncomfortable first dance is over, the bride and groom's family joins them on the dance floor. Jacqueline and Max end up dancing together. Max checks in on Jacqueline to see if she's really happy, and she keeps up her pretense of a perfect wedding. Yet, she fakes her smiles throughout most of the event as Kate takes pictures. When it's time for Max to give his toast as the best man, he dedicates his whole speech to how wonderful Jacqueline is, which really touches her, even though she doesn't let it show. The event ends with Kate catching Jacqueline's bouquet. That night, Peter carries Jacqueline to her bridal cabin. He takes one look at the amazing starry night sky and decides to stretch out under that sky by himself, which is a disappointment for Jacqueline. She lies down on her bed and realizes that this wasn't the happiest day of her life. She wishes to have a do-over before falling asleep. Luckily, she gets exactly that as when she wakes up the next morning. It is a do-over of her wedding day. All the events unfold in the same way at the same pace, and she suspects that everyone is in on a prank to give her a do-over. Margaret doubts that Jacqueline had a concussion when she fell in the woods yesterday, and calls a doctor. Kate remains confused as Jacqueline slaps herself to wake herself up from this dream, but to no avail. Eventually, Kate believes Jacqueline and prepares to leave the wedding. The next most likely explanation that pops into Jacqueline's mind is that all of this is real, but the wedding day she experienced before was a dream. Kate doesn't care about any of that and tries to rescue her sister from this disastrous marriage. But Jacqueline can't hurt Peter and goes through with the wedding a second time as well. Jacqueline maintains her composure this time and doesn't trip and fall into Max's arms, but still gets wine spilled on her. Jacqueline lives through a painful repeat of her wedding day except for slight differences. While dancing with Max, she admits that she might be going insane and desperately wants this day to be over. Then afterward, before he can dedicate his speech to her, she interrupts him. Jacqueline cuts the event short to go to bed with Peter and finally end this day. This time when she goes to bed, she leaves a half-eaten chocolate on her bedside desk and wishes for this day to end forever. Too bad that she wakes up on that same day again and her chocolate is untouched. This time she is sure that this is a do-over and lets out a scream. Kate, Margaret, and Peter are in her room trying to rule out the possibilities for her erratic behavior, when the doctor directs them all to give her some space. The doctor guesses that she's having a case of cold feet, but she clarifies that she isn't trying to get out of this wedding. She complains about living the same day over and over again, which causes the doctor to prescribe her a mild antidepressant. After their hilarious conversation, the doctor tells Peter and Margaret that she should be tested for. Jacqueline steps out onto the porch, exasperated. That's when Max catches her and sneaks her out of there, on her insistence. They run off together to sit by the edge of a river, where she confides in him about everything that she has been going through. Shockingly, Max believes her because that's how open-minded he is. His experience working in Africa has taught him a lot about life and how one can put clues into the universe. Jacqueline agrees and decides to break the cycle by staying here with him tonight. If she never goes back to her room, then the whole day can't start all over again. Max reminds her that that'll break Peter's heart, but she insists she doesn't want to marry him again. Jacqueline is determined to stay here regardless of whether he stays or not. So he utilizes this time to teach her swimming, but she only makes it as far as ankle-deep water. She gets hungry while they're sitting by the bonfire, so he gives her berries he picked earlier. She trusts him and eats them this time. They take turns guarding and sleeping that night. After this, Max tells her to find him and get his help if she wakes up in the same loop tomorrow. The night ends with them cuddled up by the bonfire. Jacqueline goes bananas when she wakes up in the same loop the next morning. Peter fails to handle her mental breakdown and makes it all about himself. The next time, Jacqueline doesn't waste time and finds Max in his room. They go for swimming lessons again and now stand in knee-deep water. She shares that she developed a fear of water by herself as an adult. With time, Jacqueline is swimming with him in her bathing suit. It's revealed that she plays it safe all the time because her parents perished unexpectedly in a car accident. Max teaches her that she can make all the right choices and that life might still happen to her, so she can't always control everything. They have deep, meaningful conversations, and swimming lessons now turn into dance lessons. After connecting more with him, she gets curious about the remark "na" made in Italian, which bothered them. So she learns Italian next to decode the meaning herself. She meets up with Kate and reminisces about their childhood while she plans her wedding the way she wants it. She's trying on the wedding dress of her dreams when she divulges about how intelligent, inspiring, and charming Max is. Kate can see how Jacqueline's whole face lights up when she talks about Max, even though he's Peter's brother. While her love life is still up in the air, Jacqueline knows one thing for sure by now. If there's one day she must live over and over again, she'd pick this one with her sister. The next morning, she gets everything right and throws the best wedding ever. Everything is according to her likes and she looks extremely beautiful, just like her mom. Naturally, Peter isn't happy in this version of the wedding because of how different and incompatible they truly are. That evening, Jacqueline ends up in her usual spot by the river when Max walks up to her. He is still in awe of the wedding she threw. Max confronts her for being a coward and playing it safe. This, and spending time with Peter, opens her eyes to the reality that marrying Peter is a huge mistake. She discovers that Peter's proposal, and "I do," were lies, because he wants something else for his life. She breaks up with him at the altar, which is a relief for him. The day ends with her getting together with Max and falling asleep by the bonfire. That's exactly where they wake up the next day, and now Jacqueline has her dream wedding with the groom she wants.